أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا ونبينا محمد بن عبد الله وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين اللهم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي وبعد. Alhamdulillah, we continue with our recital of the Kitab Riyadus Saliheen compiled by Imam Abu Zakaria Sharaf al-Nawawi rahmatullahi alayhi. And this book is very, very beautiful. And you know what, subhanAllah, I had a copy of this book in this print, and then it went missing. I don't want to say someone nicked it, but it went missing. And we were reading from like PDFs and stuff. But now, alhamdulillah, when I went to Cairo this time, I got another copy, and this is a really good translation. I don't know if it's available in this country. Darul Salam's printing, it's basically the full version with the translation, with the Arabic and the tashkil and everything. So that's quite rare. Usually they come in 2 volumes. It's got a bit of color there as well. It's a really nice book, alhamdulillah. And it made me realize that we've done good progress. I mean, even though it's been years, probably about 600 or so hadith away from the end, which is good progress, alhamdulillah. We left off in the chapter of zakat and the importance and the virtues of zakat. And you might be thinking, well, why are you talking about zakat? It's not time to give zakat. We are reading the whole book, so inshallah we study as it comes along. Next chapter after zakat is the chapter of the virtues of Ramadan, which we covered before Ramadan. So we're not going to repeat that. We're going to skip that. So inshallah that will save us some time as well. So where did we stop? We stopped on hadith number 1210. Continuing from 1211. And it reads, عن أبي أيوب رضي الله عنه أن رجلا قال للنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أخبرني بعمل يدخلني الجنة قال تعبد الله ولا تشرك به شيئا وتقيم الصلاة وتؤتي الزكاة وتصل الرحم. Sayyidina Abu Ayyub رضي الله عنه وأرضاه, he reports that a man came to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and asked him a question, and he said to him, inform me and tell me about a good deed that if I do it, inshallah, it will take me to Jannah. So he's asking a very big question. It's a small question, but it's a direct question, and it's a very powerful question. Ya Rasulullah, tell me a good deed. If I do it, I'm going to go to Jannah. No, he didn't long out the discussion. I want to go to Jannah. What shall I do? So the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam responded by saying, first of all, in order for you to go to Jannah, you have to ta'budullah, you have to worship Allah. You can't go to Jannah without worshipping Allah. Every Muslim wants to go to Jannah, but then often we don't pray, we don't fulfill Allah's commands and so on. So to worship Allah is the first step. To worship Allah alone. And then it says, وَلَا تُشْرِكْ بِهِ شَيْئًا. We can't commit polytheism or associate partners with Allah. Now you might be thinking, that's quite common sense. Why are you telling a bunch of Muslims not to commit polytheism or commit shirk? Well, it's true, it is common sense, but shirk is of different types. Not all shirk is the same. You know, shirk al-dhulmun azim, the main shirk is, the big oppression of shirk is, of course, to actually worship something besides Allah. But then there are also other aspects of say for example polytheism or shirk, which is khafi, which is not so apparent. For example, when you claim to have a quality of Allah. For example, someone has arrogance. Someone thinks they're perfect. Is that a quality befitting of a human being? No, the only one that has the right to be proud and to feel complete and to have pride in that sense, and jabarut and quwwa and takabbur and kibriya, is Allah Azza wa Jal, because He is the perfect one. All of us are nothing. We're small, insignificant creations of Allah who only have significance in Allah's servitude. And so therefore, if someone is extremely arrogant and feel too full of themselves, then this is leading to a form of shirk. Yes. Sometimes instead of worshipping Allah and obeying Allah, we obey our nafs and our desires more than everything else. So this is something else to be worried about. Sometimes in ibadah, in tilawah of the Quran, in salah, You're supposed to be focusing on only doing that for the sake of Allah, but what you do is have other intentions. You're reciting half to impress people and half to impress Allah. You're giving sadaqah and zakat, half to impress people and to show off, and other two, you're going to Hajj and Umrah. And now it's become a trend, to go to Umrah just for the sake of, we don't know what's in people's hearts, but this is not a good culture to have where people just go to Umrah and it's just about doing Facebook or Instagram lives from there. This is a place you want to seclude yourself and be with Allah Azza wa Jal. And so this is something else to be cautious about. I'm not saying it's forbidden, but it depends upon your intention. So now if you're doing Umrah and Tawaf, but your intention is to show off to people, then what have you done? You've associated with Allah's worship something else, which is pleasing others. You have to be very careful about that. To worship Allah alone, Allah says, وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. When you do something for the sake of Allah, whether it be learning, whether it be teaching, whether it be worshipping, praying, every single thing has to be only for the sake of Allah. Any association of any other intention will invalidate, will destroy, and will destroy the reward of that good action. Allah continues to focus on your ibadah and continues to listen to your ibadah, continues to listen to your salah, so long as you continue to remain fully, wholeheartedly in His obedience. Okay. And then He says, وَتُقِيمُ الصَّلَاةِ. If you want to go to Jannah, you have to worship Allah, avoid shirk, and establish salah. Establish salah, meaning you have to fulfill your first pillar of Islam, which is your shahada, worship Allah alone and not to associate. We say, أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله وأشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. Next pillar is to establish salah. Third is to tu'ti zakah. You might be surprised. You might be thinking, well, a lot of brothers are young here. Maybe you don't have to give zakat. But you might be surprised to learn that, mashallah, you're baligh, and a lot of you are zakat eligible. Do you know what the minimum quantum for zakat is? It's about £300. I'll tell you, most teenagers have 300 pounds. So teenagers, I don't know why you're not giving zakat. You're supposed to give fard upon you. In fact, according to other schools of law, zakat is even fard upon minors who are not baligh. So therefore, in summary, when you own 300 pounds or so, know that you've hit the mark for giving zakat, which means from the day that you hit the mark of 300 pounds, you start, your zakat year begins. You know, you have tax year in this country. You guys know about tax year? Tax year is from April, I think. Ends in April, March to April. So your tax year, i.e. your zakat year, begins bespoke, based upon when you become owner of 300 pounds. Whether it be in cash, gold or silver. You might own cash. You might have bank account balance, which is still cash. Gold, I don't know why someone might have gold, or silver, or cryptocurrency, or other things, or trade goods, like something that you bought with the intention to sell. All of that's value adds up to 300 pounds. That means you have entered into your zakat, your tax year, your zakat year. From that, you count a year. You can do it from January, February, and all of that stuff. But remember that the January, February months and the Gregorian calendar is actually longer. So if you start from the 10th of January, that means you need to give your zakat on the 30th of December. 10 days earlier, 11 days earlier. Because the Islamic year is shorter, do you get it? So say for example, you became zakat eligible on the 10th of, say July. 10th of July. When does your zakat year finish? 11 days. Say 15 days before that. So now, if say for example, what's the date today? 6th of July. If you become zakat, if all of a sudden, mashallah, you've got 300 pounds worth of money, cash, gold, silver, whatever, anything else, someone gave you a gift or you've earned it, it's there for you. You've hit the quantum. You've reached the nisab. Now what? Now what you do is remember that when it comes to the following year, not 6th of July, go back 11 days. What's 11 days before 6th of July? 25th of June, right? To be on the precautious side, say 20th of June. 20th of June, what you do, you say, okay, how much money do I have today? Cash, gold, silver, whatever else, trade goods, crypto, whatever you have. Instead of 300 pounds, today is 1,000 pounds. On that day, in 2024, 20th of June, mashallah, you have now 2,000 pounds or more. In the middle, you had 300 pounds at the beginning of that zakat year. In the middle, you went to, say, £50, you went to £100, you went to £50,000, you went came down again. All of that, forget it, it doesn't matter. That's not how zakat is calculated. Zakat is calculated based upon the beginning and the end of the zakat year. At the end of the zakat year, whatever you have now, suppose you have £1,000, okay? That is what you pay zakat on. With, of course, minusing your any immediate bills. Immediately you have to pay a phone bill. Immediately you have to pay a gas bill, a this bill, a that bill. Immediately you owe your friend 50 quid. You have to give it back. You have to pay that back. So whatever you owe immediately, I say immediately because I'm trying to clarify something. Because some people will say, well, I have a mortgage for a house, £500,000, so I will never ever give zakat. So I mean, there is an opinion like that, but what it is, the correct way or the better way is to only minus that which is immediate. Do you get it? You might say, well, student loan. I have student loan, £70,000, whatever. I have loads of student loan. Does that mean you never pay zakat? No. You only minus that which is due immediately. Is your student loan due this month? It's not, because you haven't even got a job yet. You're not earning 15k yet. So you only minus that which is due immediately on the 20th of June next year. Khalas, after minusing everything from £1,000, £800 is remaining. Divide that by 100 and give 2.5% of that away to zakat. These are you have to give zakat. You have to give zakat, just like you have to pray, you have to give zakat. And we've read in the previous hadith just before this in the same chapter about the importance of zakat. And the Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq said, whomsoever differentiates and differs between salat and zakat, we shall indeed go to war against them. Because some people were saying at the death of the Prophet Muhammad, they're like, okay, we'll pray, we'll be Muslims, we'll pray, but we're not going to give zakat because zakat, they don't want to give their money away. They want it to be stingy. So Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq said that this is not acceptable. You've differentiated between two pillars of Islam, they're the same thing. They're both as fard as each other. But unfortunately, now can you imagine Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq went to war against his people? There are many, many Muslims who, if Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq was alive today, would go to war against us. Because they think I don't have to give zakat. You'd be forced out of your hands. And it should be, because it's a tax. You'd have to, but just like the HMRC would force it out of your hand. You'll know in the future. If you don't pay your taxes, big problem. So if you don't pay your zakat, it's a big problem as well in the sight of Allah. And you can't get away from Allah. Allah is watching everything. And then he said, the last point, and to maintain your ties of kinship. You want to go to Jannah? These are the advices. Worship Allah, don't commit shirk, establish salah, give zakat, and maintain ties of kinship. There are also a few other small things. For example, if Hajj is wajib upon you, fard upon you, fasting, and so on. But ultimately, do these things you're supposed to do and avoid that which you're not supposed to do. You'll go to Jannah. It's as simple as that. And that will be further clarified in the following hadith. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن أعرابيا أتى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال يا رسول الله دلني على عمل إذا عملته دخلت الجنة قال تعبد الله لا تشرك به شيئا وتقيم الصلاة وتؤتي الزكاة المفروضة وتصوم رمضان قال والذي نفسي بيده لا أزيد على هذا فلما ولى قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم من سره أن ينظر إلى رجل من أهل الجنة فلينظر إلى هذا. Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu arda is narrating that a Bedouin person, and Bedouin a person means people are living in the desert. And generally those people that live in the desert, they're very straightforward people. Tell me this means tell me this. Tell me to do this, I'll do it. They're not very overly complicated. It's the city dwellers that are overly complicated. They think too clever for themselves. But generally, Arabi people are known to be Bedouins, and they will do as they're told. So he is saying, he came and he asked the Prophet ﷺ, Ya Rasulullah, O Messenger of Allah, indicate me to an action. If I do it, I will go to Jannah. Simple. I want to go to Jannah, what shall I do? So the Prophet ﷺ answered him similarly. He said, Ta'budullah, you have to worship Allah and don't commit shirk. And then he said, establish salah. And then he said, give zakah, the fard zakah. Because if you want to give more sadaqah, that's not fard, that's good for you, but it's not fard. Fast Ramadan, and then, because of course, fasting Ramadan is from the pillars of Islam as well. He didn't mention Hajj, perhaps Hajj was not fard then yet. So he said, قال, because Hajj didn't become fard only at the end of the life of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. That's when Hajj became fard, because before the Hajj wasn't even possible, because they weren't allowed to go to Makkah, as you know. So, nonetheless, fast Ramadan. And then this man, now this Bedouin person, he's a straight up person. You told me to do this, I'll do it. He said, قال, he said, وَالَّذِي نَفْسِ بِيَدِهِ, I swear by the one in whose hands is my soul, meaning I swear by Allah, I will never do anything more than this. Meaning I'm going to do this. Prophet ﷺ, you told me to do this, I'll do that much. I'm not going to do more, I'm not going to do less. You told me to do it, I'll do it. Clear cut, simple. فَلَمَّا وَلَّى, when the man turned away, the Prophet ﷺ said to the Sahaba, whomsoever would like to see and look at a person of the people of Jannah, then let them look at this man. Meaning he made a promise that he will do these things, and he also made a vow by himself that I'm not going to do more. If he does it properly, then he will go to Jannah. From here, we learn the fact that fara'id and wajibat are those things which you have to do. And others like sunan and mustahabbat, if you do, it's good for you, but you are not to be brought to question for it. Because the Prophet ﷺ allowed for this Arabi, this Bedouin man, just to suffice with the basic fara'id. And there's more discussion, more fiqh to be taken out, and there's also, this dalil is also used when they discuss the wujub, or the fact that it's sunnah to pray witr and so on. The mas'ala of witr that we spoke about in our Islamic studies class was it Islamic studies or hadith class we spoke about a few months back? Witr, that was a beautiful discussion about the importance of witr and the way of witr, the methodology. Marhaba, Ustad Mu'il, marhaba, munawwar. No problem, inshallah. Barakallah fiqh. Take care of yourself. That's that. 1213. عن جرير بن عبد الله رضي الله عنه قال بايعت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم على إقام الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة والنصح لكل مسلم. Jarir ibn Abdullah narrated that I pledged allegiance to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, meaning when he accepted his shahada and he gave his vows and his agreement and his allegiance to the Prophet ﷺ, Prophet ﷺ would give them certain advice. That you are following me, you become a Muslim, these are the basic conditions of you being a Muslim. You're agreeing to fulfill these tasks. He said, I gave allegiance to the Prophet ﷺ to pray and to pay my zakat and to have the welfare of every Muslim at my heart. وَالنُّصْحْ لِكُلِّ Muslim. Nush means to wish well, to want good. Brothers and sisters, to want good for other Muslims is a part of being a Muslim. Yes. And that's why from your iman is to love for your brother what you love for yourself, do you see? And from your iman is also to take care of your neighbors and those who are your surrounding and your next of kin and so on. Having said that, bear this in mind. You have to wish well for other Muslims. There are a lot of people out there who claim to be Muslim, but they hate to see other Muslims successful. They're okay with non-Muslim being successful. They're okay with non-Muslim being happy and making it and all of that kind of stuff. But Muslim, for some reason, that burns them. They don't like that for some reason. It's weird. It's weird. They have a special hatred towards other Muslims, even though they're Muslims themselves. Some Muslims, they look at other Muslims and think negative of the other Muslim just by looking at them. Oh, look at this guy. Look at the size of his beard. It's too big. Look at this guy. He's wearing a turban. What does he think he is? Look at this guy. That's one side. Look at this guy. He doesn't even wear jubba. What kind of Muslim is he? This guy doesn't even wear kurta. What kind of Muslim is he? All of these negative sisters among themselves, they have their internal beef. They know better. Subhanallah. So wishing well, this person is a Muslim. I want the best for them. I want them to be happy. Not the opposite. People will sometimes advise you how to destroy relationships. I don't want to go into a tangent about this kind of bad nasiha, but wishing well and giving good nasiha. And nusr means to give advice as well as to wish well for the person that you're giving advice to. So this is very, very important. Now the next one is a very long hadith, so I will just read the translation to you. Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu narrated that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, any person who possesses the gold or silver and does not pay their zakat, does not pay what is due on it, i.e. someone owns gold or silver or cash or whatever, and they don't pay their zakat, they think it's alright, I don't have to give zakat, who knows. Here comes the punishment. On the day of resurrection, sheets of silver and gold would be heated, because you wanted to save gold. You want to save gold. You want to save money. You want to save cash. You want to save silver. You want to save crypto. Allah will bring it into a physical form. Sheets of silver and gold will be heated for him in the fire of Jahannam. And with them, his flank, his forehead, his back, his sides, his forehead, his back will be burned and branded and tortured with that heated, that same possession, that same wealth that you thought, oh, you're preserving. I want to keep it close to my body. As if you want to use the money to keep yourself warm and keep you heated as insulation. You want to keep yourself heated? Allah will give you heat. May Allah preserve us all. So these sheets will become a form of torment and punishment for those who do not pay their zakat. When they cool down, this is the problem of Jahannam. The problem of Jahannam is that it's never ending. So maybe the sheets will cool down. They will be heated again, and the same process will be repeated during the day of measure, whereof will be 50,000 years throughout the entirety of Yawm al-Qiyamah. And also, if Allah wills, also in Jahannam, this will be repeated. This will continue until judgment is pronounced among Allah's slaves, and then he will be shown his final abode, either paradise or hell. So these people who don't pay their zakat, their punishment will even begin from Yawm al-Qiyamah, from the judgment place itself, even before going to Jahannam. It was asked, so now the Sahaba asking, how about someone who owns camels and does not pay zakat, pay what is due on him, i.e. their zakat? Because there are also zakat amounts eligible, zakat also due on camels, on horses, and so on. But we don't usually study it because there aren't many farmers among us. But there is zakat. So if you have a lot of camels, inshallah, we should need to discuss the zakat of camels. But in Bangladesh, they have cows, and you see, so they need to, that's a matter that should be discussed. So what about someone that has camels and does not pay their due? He replied, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam replied, in the same way the owner of the camel who does not discharge what is due in respect of them, their due includes their milking on the day when they are taken to water, will be thrown on his face or on his back in a vast desert plain on the day of resurrection. And they will trample upon him with their hoofs and bite him with their teeth. Can you imagine a camel biting someone? Their very own camel that they preserved, that they thought that they were saving, not giving zakat, not giving what is due upon them, will become their enemies on Yawm al-Qiyamah. And the camels will trod and trample upon them and bite them with their teeth. As often as the first of them passes him, the last of them will be made to return during a day, the measure of which is 50,000 years until judgment is pronounced among Allah's servants, and he will be shown his final abode either in paradise or in hell. So this will continue until Qiyamah is open, and then after that he may be in Jannah or Jahannam depending on Allah's decision. It was once again asked, O Prophet of Allah, what about cattle and sheep? Someone has cows or sheep. He Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam responded, if anyone possesses cattle or sheep and does not pay their due, so similar, you own cattle or sheep, you don't pay their due of giving zakat, on the day of resurrection, he will be thrown on his face in a vast plain desert. He will find none of his animals missing with twisted horns, without horns, or with their hooves. As often as first of them passes, the last of them will be made to return to him during a day of which, the size of which, or the length of which is 50,000 years until Allah decides. So your possessions will become your enemies if zakat is not paid upon them. It was asked, O Prophet of Allah, what about horses? Upon this, the Prophet ﷺ said, there are three types of horses. One which is a burden for the owner, meaning will be a burden for the owner on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Another which is a shield, protector for the owner on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Another one which makes the owner entitled to a reward. The one for whom these are a burden is the person who rears them, meaning he rides the horse, he uses the horse, he uses the animals for the sake of showing pride or to cause injury or to the sentiments of Muslims. He's just trying to show off, he's just trying to act like he's being arrogant, or he's trying to harm people with his riding animal or his ride, whatever it is. You can take the measurement for that for today's cars and vehicles and so on. If your intention behind that is just to show off, if your intention behind that is just to offend and to make others people feel smaller than you and so on, They will be the cause of torment for their owners. The one for whom these are a shield. Now the second type of horses are for whom the horses themselves will become shields, protect them. Is the person who raised them for the sake of Allah, but does not forget the right of Allah upon them. Meaning, they use the horses, they use the property, they use their cars, and they use their this and that, but they do not forget the rights of Allah upon them, meaning they pay their zakat once it is due, and they fulfill the rights of the animal also. So it says, the one for whom these are a shield is the person who rears them for the sake of Allah and does not forget the rights of Allah concerning their backs and their necks, i.e. lets a needy person ride them if need be, and so they are a shield for that person. Those which bring reward to the one who rears them in pastures and gardens are the ones that are used in the cause of Allah for protection, for warfare, in a Muslim military and so on. These are become a form of ajr and sadaqah and reward for that person if they use that for that purpose. Whatever they eat from the meadows and the gardens will be recorded. Now if, say for example, someone is breeding and feeding an animal in the right way, with the right intention, to be of service to others, for it to be a contributor, for it to help the Muslim community and so on, do you see? Then now imagine now these horses and these camels, they are very powerful, they're very strong, they need to be fed. So you're thinking, I've got to feed a camel, I've got to feed a horse, waste of money, what's the point of that? Subhanallah, look at the details of the teaching of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He is telling you, whatever they eat from the meadows and the gardens will be recorded on his behalf as good deeds. Your horse eats from the grass, from this, you buy horse food. Some will buy horse food, right? You buy a horse, whatever you do, you need to take them to the vet. You need to go and look after them. You need to trim their nails. I think, what's the point? But if someone is doing it for the sake of Allah, to look after the animal, for the animal to be of service to others, of help to others. Of course, horses are not likely for us to imagine how that would be, but maybe in other countries that will be a reality. Now, from that we can extend perhaps, say for example, if someone has a car and they use that for serving others, for helping others, and they're looking after that car, they're servicing that car, MOTing that car, changing the tires of that car, but the intention is that I want to use this vehicle to help others, to be of service to others. Then every single time you spend money upon it, then it will be recorded as a good deed on behalf of that person. So much so that their droppings and urine will be counted for them, an equal number of good deeds. So even if it was a horse and there's droppings and etc., even that is considered to be, because you're maintaining it, you're looking after it, as a form of good deed. Even when they break their tying rope, and every height from which they climb and every hoof print which they leave will be counted as a good deed on behalf of the owner. When their owners leads them through a stream from which they drink, though he does not intend to quench their thirst, you're just walking with your animal for some reason. A shepherd is walking with his sheep, with his flock. A cowman is walking with his cows, but he's not really intending for them to drink water from that river, from that stream. But they're drinking anyway. They're not needing permission. The hadith is saying that even that passing by drinking, Allah will reward the person who's the owner for looking after, for using that for the service and taking care of others with that. So again, we can perhaps extend that example for even cars, to say, if someone spends their money and etc., maintaining a car, maintaining a vehicle for serving others, and all that kind of stuff we can imagine. Does not intend to quench their thirst, Allah will record for them the quantity of water of what they will drink on behalf of them as good deeds. It was asked, O Prophet of Allah, what about donkeys? So the list carries on. What about donkeys? Upon this, the Prophet ﷺ said, nothing has been revealed to me in regards to the donkeys in particular except this one comprehensive verse. Meaning, I haven't got a specific hadith for donkeys and what's going to happen with donkeys. But he says, مَنْ جَاءَ بِالْحَسَنَةِ فَلَهُ عَشْرُ أَمْثَالِهَا. Or, فَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَى وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ شَرًّا يَرَى. Even if you do the smallest of good deed, it will be counted and he will see it on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Even if it's an atom's weight of good deed. So even if it means kindness to a donkey. So we have a lot of people talk about animal rights. We said this before and we should say it again and we should share this with friends and colleagues. The Prophet ﷺ was the pioneer of animal rights. Yes, he was the pioneer of animal rights. Looking after them, feeding them, providing them. A camel came to complain to the Prophet ﷺ And he reprimanded the owner saying, how dare you mistreat this animal, this ride of, that Allah has given you. You're not feeding it enough and you're overburdening it. Subhanallah. And then you know of the woman that went to Jahannam because she trapped a cat. She trapped a cat in her house and starved it to death. And she will go to Jahannam for that. Another woman will go to Jannah because she fed water to a thirsty dog. And she was a very sinful woman, but she will go to Jannah because of this act of kindness. So that's why the hadith is لا تحقرن من المعروف شيئا. Don't belittle any good deed. Any good deed. If you do it sincerely for the sake of Allah, it might seem small to you, but it's big in the sight of Allah because you meant sincerity and you meant it with your full heart. That brings us to the end of the chapter regarding zakat. In summary, my friends, brothers and sisters, remember that this is just a reminder of how important zakat is. If zakat is due upon you, please do not delay. And if you haven't paid for previous years, you must backdate those years. In the next chapter, obligation of observing fast during Ramadan and clarifying its virtues and related topics. We've done this. So now we'll be skipping hadith number 1215 to subhanallah, there's a lot of 1215 to 1245. How many hadiths have we missed? 30. Inshallah, perhaps we can catch that up if we need to, but I believe we've covered these. Chapter number 225. It's a small one. Let's quickly cover it, inshallah. باب فضل صوم المحرم وشعبان والأشهر الحرم. Virtues of fasting in Muharram, which is the next month, and Sha'ban, which is before Ramadan, and the sacred months, which are, who knows the sacred months? Rajab, Dhul Qa'dah, Dhul Hijjah, and who knows the 4 sacred months? Muharram, yes, Muharram. Ramadan is not the sacred months, but it has its own speciality. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أفضل الصيام بعد رمضان شهر الله المحرم وأفضل الصلاة بعد الفريضة صلاة الليل. Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu arda is saying that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam has said that the best of fasting after Ramadan is fasting in the month of Allah, al-Muharram. Allah has called al-Muharram the month of Allah, which is next month. So fasting therein is extremely virtuous, especially fasting the 10th of al-Muharram, or the 9th and the 10th of al-Muharram, or the 10th and the 11th of al-Muharram, meaning 10th a day before and a day after. But 10th alone is also fulfilling a sunnah, which means that Allah loves the fasting of al-Muharram, especially the 10th, because this is the day of Ashura, and this is the day of Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, when he was rescued from Fir'aun. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he came to Medina, he found that the Jews were fasting on this day. So he asked them, why are you fasting on this day? They said, because this is the day that Sayyidina Musa was saved. He said, we have a closer relationship with Musa than you, because we follow Sayyidina Musa and you don't. Because Sayyidina Musa propagated Tawheed, and that's what we follow. He propagated the worship of Allah alone, not associating partners, and that's what we follow. So the best of fasting after Ramadan is al-Muharram. وَأَفْضَلُ الصَّلَاةِ بَعْدَ الْفَرِيضَةِ. And the best salah that you can do after your fard, you want to do some extra nafal salah. The best nafal salah that you can do is the salah of layl, meaning tahajjud. That's the best time to do your tahajjud. And a lot of people I know, they spend the whole night up nowadays, so you can use that time. Half an hour before Fajr time, do some tahajjud, 2 rak'at, 4 rak'at. Who here doesn't have any needs? None of us. All of us have needs. You have so many needs. Young men, young women, old women, they all have needs. You might have needs financial, you might have needs health needs, illnesses. You might have needs for marriage. You might have needs for family problems, to be solved. All of these, inshallah, make dua for them, because the Qiyamul Layl and Salatul Layl is the most beloved to Allah after the Fara'id. وعن عائشة رضي الله عنها قالت لم يكن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يصوم من شهر أكثر من شعبان فإنه كان يصوم شعبان كله. This is about Sha'ban, the month of Ramadan. Aisha radiallahu anhu wa said, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam never used to fast as excessively as he did in Sha'ban. He used to often fast the whole of it. So these are sort of miscellaneous ahadith pertaining to fasting around Hajj, Muharram. The next one, narrated by Mujiba al-Bahiliya on the authority of her father or uncle, that he visited the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam once and then went to see him again after a year. His appearance had totally changed. He asked the Prophet ﷺ if he recognized him. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Who are you?" He replied, "I am Al-Bahili, who visited you last year." The Prophet ﷺ said, "You are quite handsome. What has changed with your appearance so much?" He replied, "Since I left here, I have not eaten anything except at night." The Prophet ﷺ remarked, "You have tortured yourself. Observe fast in the month of patience and fast one day from each month." He submitted, "Permit me to observe more voluntary fast because I have the capacity to do so." Look at the difference. He is saying, "Let me fast." This Sahabi has fasted the whole year. For the whole year, he said, "You look ill. You've damaged yourself. You're starving yourself." He said, "You have tortured yourself. Observe fast in Ramadan and one fast only from each month." He submitted, "Oh, Ya Rasulullah, give me permission to do more." Prophet ﷺ said, "Then observe fast for 2 days every month." He said, "Permit me to observe more." He ﷺ said, "Observe 3 fasts for 3 days in every month." He requested that he should be allowed to observe more fast. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Fast 3 days during the sacred months and stop fasting for 3 days alternatively." Meaning 3 fasts, 3 days off, 3 days on. He ﷺ joined his 3 fingers together and left them apart while repeating this sentence thrice. Meaning this man, the Sahabi radiallahu anhu, was fasting excessively. That was their level of fasting. So we should inshallah try to match that as close as possible. Virtues of fasting and doing good deeds in the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, of Arafah, of 6 days of Shawwal. This whole section is mainly to do with fasting. What I will do is, inshallah, I will stop up to here. If there are any questions, we'll take them, and then inshallah we'll continue thereafter. The next chapter is about itikaf, and then it's about Hajj. SubhanAllah, Allah's qadr, we're doing after Hajj. No problem, inshallah. After Hajj. And then we'll go to struggling in the path of Allah, the virtues of jihad, which means, in the legitimate one, not the people that just claim it and then they just do crazy, stupid stuff. This is, inshallah, when we come to that, inshallah, we'll talk specifically and clearly, because it is something there's a lot of people misunderstand, Muslims and non-Muslims. More so non-Muslims than the media narrative that try to make it look, etc. They just stigmatize the entire word as if the whole word is something of something else. And so on, inshallah. When we come there, we'll discuss. Are there any questions with this regard? If not, we'll stop up to here, inshallah, so you can prepare for Salatul Isha. Tayyib, that's good. Nice and simple, inshallah. We'll carry on bi'idhnillah with this class. Next week, same time, Salatul Maghrib, inshallah Azza wa Jal. And tomorrow is our 30th class. May Allah accept from all of us. سبحانك اللهم أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.